Majora's Mask. Released at the tail end of the Nintendo 64's life in the year 2000, very nearly 20 years ago, Ocarina of Time was a massive success, and naturally Nintendo wanted to capitalize on its success with a sequel. Ocarina of Time ended pretty conclusively with a hero's journey told, but there's one thing the game left hanging. At the end of Ocarina of Time, Navi leaves Link, for unexplained reasons. I understand it was done because silence is golden, but yeah, why did she leave? Not that it's important. So to start off, our hero, Link, is back in his childhood. He has departed from Hyrule on Epona to search for his missing friend. But along the way, two fairies scare Epona and knock Link unconscious, and then suddenly a strange imp wearing a mask appears. He steals Link's ocarina, and Link gives pursuit. When you gain control of Link, he plays the same as he did in Ocarina of Time, but what stands out to me is that there are some aesthetics that are different, such as when jumping across platforms, Link will now do acrobatic flips instead of just standard jumps. As this is a more experienced Link, this makes sense. But unfortunately, Link falls into something and lands perfectly fine. I guess he can survive falls from that kind of height without taking damage. The Skull Kid says he got rid of Epona and turns Link into this. Wow. That look of despair and that scream when Link sees what he's been turned into. He may not talk, but I really felt the impact. Skull Kid leaves Link behind, but Tattle is separated from her brother Tail and decides to join with Link to meet back up with her brother. Of course, this sequence serves as a nice little tutorial on how to use Link's new Deku body, and you come across this strange tree. It has such a sad face on it, much like Link in his Deku form. Link is met by the Happy Mask salesman, and he is the same guy from Ocarina of Time, a minor character but given an expanded role here. He says he can return Link to his normal form if he gets the Ocarina back, and Link will return Majora's Mask to him. Turns out Skull Kid stole it from him. So Link takes his first steps into Clock Town, as it's called. People are hustling and bustling, going about their day, and you take a look up and that moon looks awfully big.
Also, you get to meet this jackass! He's not too bad in this game, all he does is sell you maps.
But this is the game that introduced Tingle to the world. Anyway, Link then rescues the Great Fairy, who gives Link a magic meter, allowing Link to shoot bubbles. Then comes a game of hide and seek with these kids to get into the telescope area and get the moon's tear. Nothing much to it, so you're free to explore the town and the game encourages this. The mayor's office, the soldiers and councilmen are arguing over whether or not to cancel the Carnival of Time, while the mayor is indecisive.
So you pass the time and the clock begins to tick as it approaches morning. The screen gets smaller with each tick.
On the second day, a rain hushes over the town, and I decided to follow this woman out of the Clock Town Inn and made her way to the laundry pool. She seems rather sad, but you don't know why. Then the clock ticks more and more. The music gets more intense. People are preparing to evacuate. The guards have their hands over their hearts because they're helpless. Finally, the night comes. Very few people remain, except one guy who howls his defiance. Finally, at the stroke of midnight, the door opens to the top of the clock tower. Finally, confronting the Skull Kid, Tail tries to warn you of the four who are in distant locations.
But it's too late now, and the Skull Kid gives a very haunting scream.
But fortunately, with quick reflexes, Link grabs the ocarina, and he gets a memory of Zelda playing for him the Song of Time.
It's a nice moment that reminds you of the connection that Link and Zelda had in Ocarina of Time.
Although it starts an unfortunate trend of Link having to relearn songs he should already know.
So, Link goes back in time, which isn't a new occurrence for this Link since he is the hero of time! How appropriate. So you talk to the Happy Mask salesman, and he returns Link to his human form. But unfortunately, you couldn't hold your end of the bargain because, the game would be over too early if you did. He takes it well! Yeah, he tells Link of the mask's backstory, and it's a very interesting backstory, which raises questions as to what he wants with the mask. But whatever the case, you go back out, and now you're ready to take on the land and save this doomed land of Termina. The main gameplay of Majora's Mask is basically going around the world, doing what you can, and making sure you do it within a 3-day structure, otherwise the moon will fall. With the Ocarina of Time in hand, you can slow down time to allow you to take longer, or you can speed up if you want to go ahead. And the 3DS version improves on that by allowing you to go to whatever hour you want. It's a brilliant idea. You have all the time in the world and yet no time at all to save it. This is Link embracing his title as the hero of time to a whole new level. I mean, in Ocarina of Time, he was just going back between past and future. And now he's going back to 3 days. It's like Groundhog Day. As I went about Clocktown as human Link, when you get the Bomber's Notebook, though through different circumstances in the N64 and 3DS version, I noticed the game really encouraged you to take the time to get to know people's schedules around town. On the night of the second day, I came across this prancing guy selling a bag of bombs to this guy. This guy is really unnerving. You tend to lose your rupees when you go back in time, but fortunately it's possible to commit bank fraud and trick the banker into thinking you have way more money than that. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen!
So now when you head out to the swamp area, you come across a drawing of Skull Kid and the fairies. We see that the Skull Kid was a very lonely kid and the fairies were the first to befriend him, but something changed when Skull Kid got Majora's mask. Of course, when you enter the swamp, you see that the swamp is poisonous, but fortunately Link gets access to his Deku abilities by wearing the mask, and it's always struck out to me how the transformation process works. It's like he's in pain. The Dooku form's abilities are useful, and it feels like an extension of Link's actual abilities. So now, you get to the palace, and Link finds that the Dooku princess has gone missing. They blame this monkey for the capture, and what follows is a Metal Gear Solid-esque sequence where you must sneak through the palace, and this game has a trend of using Ocarina songs to open the dungeons, whereas in Ocarina of Time, the songs were just used as warp points. That reminds me, you do get access to warp points via these owl statues, which is nice. But in the N64 version, they're the only way to save outside of the Song of Time, which is a bit of an unfortunate design choice. This was the first N64 game to use the expansion pack. Woodfall is a very interesting dungeon, since it's about using the Deku abilities and getting the bow and arrow to your advantage. It's a short dungeon, which makes sense since it is the first one you do. The boss battle against Odawa is different depending on the version you're playing. In the N64 version, it's a straight-up battle to the death with swords, while in the 3DS version, you have to use the Dooku ability to fire Dooku nuts from above to damage his eye. Not sure what's up with this change. So anyway, when you defeat the boss, you get an interesting cutscene where a giant teaches Link a song and says to call us. Following that epic scene, we get Link stuffing the Dooku princess into a bottle. You saved the monkey, that's good. Before I move on, let's just say I did the Chase the Dooku Butler minigame, and he said something very interesting. After that, I basically went around and decided to take the time to fill up the notebook, whether it was helping an old lady from getting robbed, or helping these twin sisters think up a performance. Majora's Mask more than ever encourages you to help people. That's always been a thing in Zelda since Zelda 2 while rescuing the lost child, but here it's laid on thick. Of course, there's still heart pieces to gather, nothing new there. Some minigames you have to win in all 3 days to get the piece, but fortunately it's nothing too challenging. Also, getting stray fairies to unlock more abilities is something different, I suppose. The abilities are all worth it in the end. So now I go north to the mountain village, which is covered in an endless winter. The Gorons are here, but there's one in particular you're supposed to help. The Ghost of Dormani. He tried to save the village, but he couldn't reach Snowhead. The only thing Link can do is to heal his sorrows, so in this case you're helping to ease the regrets of a spirit that couldn't fulfill his duty in life. And now it's up to Link to fulfill what he could not. Really interesting. The Goron mask, well, I like it. It makes Link twice as strong and allows you to roll with spikes, which makes you go twice as fast. The Snowhead dungeon is designed around multiple floors, so you have to use Goron abilities accordingly. I never had much of a problem with it. It's a very visually interesting dungeon, almost like the Ice Temple that we never got in Ocarina of Time. Now for Goat. This boss is largely the same in both versions since it involves using the Goron roll to attack his body. The only minor difference in the 3DS version is that, again, you have to hit the eye. Anyway, another boss down, and another cutscene that sheds more light on these guardians that you have to rescue. And spring returns to the mountain. You return to the Goron village as a Goron, and you get a hero's welcome. Link really did the work, but I suppose it's a nice way to give Dormani a hero's send-off. With spring back, there's more stuff to do in the mountain, getting an upgrade to your sword, and the race, which is annoying because these Gorons can run you off the road. Since everything resets back to normal in a 3-day cycle, it's all said and good, but I decided to then visit Romani Ranch, which is run by two sisters, Crimea and Romani. And upon entering, Link will find Epona, and the N64 version has a nice cutscene where Link smiles and runs up to her, but the 3DS version strangely takes it out. Very odd decision. But something's wrong. This girl, Romani, well, she looks spaced out, and Crimea is lamenting the loss of their cows. First time playing, you don't know what happened, but you want to know. You want to help. So, next, I will go to Romani's ranch. Romani teaches Link Epona's song, which is odd. Link should know that song already, but whatever. She explains that every year, aliens come to steal their cows. Yeah, aliens in a Zelda game. I'll allow it because this is a parallel universe to Hyrule. Of course, I accidentally ended up failing the minigame first, which is odd considering the game isn't very hard at all. But the second attempt I succeeded, and one thing I do enjoy is going to the house and listening to Crimea and Romani's interactions. It's enough to make you care. Then the second night you have Crimea take the milk to Clocktown, and you get very interesting world building as Crimea mentions her friend Anju is getting married soon. Of course, you help ward off the attackers from destroying the milk bottles. And then, on the third night, you talk to Crimea and Romani. Crimea is going to acknowledge Romani as an adult, and wants her to sleep with her in her bed. She knows they're not going to see tomorrow, and things like that make you want to stop the moon even more, because yes, you will see tomorrow. Of course, now that I have Epona back, I'll talk about Termina Field. It's smaller than Hyrule, which helps to make it feel more condensed, and traveling here, and it is considerably much easier than before. It's still aged, but there's still plenty of secrets for you to find in Termina. Next up is the Great Bay, where first things first, you find a dying Zora named Miku, who is drowning despite being part fish. Yeah. You pull him to shore, but it's too late. He's dying. You can heal his sorrows, and yet he still has the strength to pull out one last song. I like the moment where Link lays him to rest as it feels genuine. The Zora mask, I like it in the N64 version because the Zora swims really fast. But in the 3DS version, oh man, what did they do? The swimming is completely neutered. I never watched that video yet about why Majora's Mask 3D was a bad remake, but I imagine this was one of the reasons. From then on, you have to infiltrate the pirate fortress to get the Zora eggs back, and let me tell you, it gets laughably easy in the 3DS version because you get access to the stone mask, which makes sneaking around incredibly easy. I forget how long it took to do this part to get the song. Definitely the first time I used the Song of Time to give myself more time. So finally I enter Zora Hall, and I help his girlfriend find her voice again and enter Great Bay Temple. This is much better than the Water Temple, as it's not about changing water levels, but about activating gears to activate the water stream. George? I do not know how to pronounce that. It is pretty easy in the N64 version, since it's just about swimming into him and activating the shield barrier. But in the 3DS version, this battle is dragged out since you have an above water phase and an underwater phase, and the underwater phase is so annoying. Whatever the case, that's 3 monsters down, and 3 guardians are free. You get to play a nice song with Lulu and the Zoras, which is not as good as getting welcomed by the Gorons as a hero, but it does its job. Next area is Icona Canyon.
where the spirits of the dead are uneasy and it's up to Link to put those spirits to rest. I love Iconic Castle. It has such a great feel to it. It's like Jabba's palace from Return of the Jedi. Sort of. But what really stood out to me is the house that stands out in the middle. You can't get in there until you get rid of the Gibdos around it. Inside, you sneak past the little girl and come across this. But fortunately, you should have the foreknowledge to play the Song of Healing, and it leads to a well-earned touching moment. Now that's the kind of emotion I want in a Zelda game. Stone Tower is an interesting dungeon because you have to access it twice. First time right side up, then upside down. It's an interesting, unique mechanic to a dungeon, but unfortunately I didn't bring green potions, so I found myself running low on magic. The boss, Twin Mold, is again rapidly different between the two versions. The N64 version, you just put on the giant mask and hack away, but the 3DS version changes this significantly, because you have to defeat the first one normal, and then get the giant mask and attack the second one. But Link doesn't just turn giant, he turns into the Incredible Hulk. Did they just feel like modernizing it? So, whatever the case, final spirit freed, and now nothing's stopping you from going to Skull Kid, but I want to talk about helping the people of Termina. The masks give Link abilities, especially the bunny hood, which makes Link twice as fast. Why can't he run like that normally? The masks are your reward for helping people. Every character in this game has a story, and that story is incredibly interesting. But there's one side quest I want to talk about in detail. The Anju and Keife side quest. Every time you start a cycle, the first thing you see that stands out to you is this guy in a Keaton mask putting a letter in the mailbox. And you get recruited to find the missing Keife, who disappeared. You find Anju, his fiancée, and Link agrees to meet with her that night. The whole meeting has a real film noir feel to it. Once you do meet up with Keife, he's turned into a child, but that's not important. He wants you to help in recovering his stolen son's mask that he's going to give to Anju. It was stolen by a thief named Sakan. Ha! That guy from earlier. Very interesting. So whatever the case, you go to Stone Canyon, and you sneak into the hideout. What follows is a very interesting segment where you get to control someone else other than Link, as you have to switch between Link and Keife. Link will battle enemies, and Keife pushes blocks. I ended up screwing myself once. The scene that plays when you fail is really haunting. Which made me want to go back and succeed. And eventually I did succeed. And now the final hours have hit and Keife runs back to town. What I love is the character interactions that come out of this, such as helping the postman who refuses to leave his job to flee. Waiting for Keife during the final minutes is tense, but when they reunite, the scene is well earned and reminds you of why you're fighting to take this world back from the brink of despair. With that, only one thing left to do. It's time to go fight Skull Kid, and if you want to experience this amazing finale for yourself, consider this a spoiler warning. So you finally confront Skull Kid, but this time you have the means to stop the moon. The Giants are able to stop the moon and all seems well. Tale tells you that the Skull Kid was just lonely, and if you did the backstory of Anju's grandmother, you'd know that the 4 Giants were the Skull Kid's friends. But all is not yet well. Wow, unnerving. So now it's time for the final showdown. The inside of the moon is a very peaceful field. Not what I was expecting. These kids run around. They ask you to give up your masks, but why, and the questions they ask when you do so. Every challenge they give, it's different. You have to use each of your 4 forms. The 3DS version again changes things with the Zora section, because you have to learn how to dolphin dive, which is annoying. Because it's not as easy to do in the 3DS version! Ugh. Eventually, all that's left is this strange Majora child, and he gives you one final mask, saying that you will be the bad guy. What is this mask? Is it a form of evil like the child says? It's time for the final showdown. The fight with Majora's Mask is pretty easy, but the atmosphere is amazing. But the question remains, what of the fierce deity's mask? Is it a source of evil? No, I don't see it that way. You gave up pieces of yourself to the masked kids by giving away your mask. This mask represents everyone in Termina. That's what you're fighting for, and that is why you put the mask on. With that, Majora goes down and the moon is dispelled. The giants and the Skull Kid make their peace. The masked salesman strangely comments on what happened and disappears into thin air. What? What is up with this guy? But like any real hero, Link doesn't take time to celebrate, but just go on his way. Wow. What I love about these ending credits is seeing all the people you helped. You gave them their happy endings. Seeing Romani sharpen her archery with Cremia cheering her on, Anju and Keifei's wedding makes the journey worth it. Link, and by extension you, helped these people find their happy endings. You gave them a new tomorrow. Yeah, except for the Dooku Bower. That little slump at the beginning of the game, it's heavily implied that that was his son. Wow. So all in all, does Majora's Mask hold up? I'd say yes, it does. It built on the formula that Ocarina of Time left, and did so on a smaller scale. It's aged, to be sure, but the truth of the matter is I don't care. I cared about the people I was helping, and that is one of Link's greatest accomplishments. This game has a very dark feel to it, but this game is about elevating that darkness and returning light to a dying world. Majora's Mask deserves its place in the top pantheon of Zeldas. Next time I do Zelda, I'm actually not going to be doing Wind Waker, I'll be doing the Zelda Oracle games, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, so join me then! Thanks!